its own voice, its own legs. There's only one problem. It needs your eyes. Virtual Boy. See it now in...
Hello and welcome once again to another old school hardware review from ReplayRetro. This week we're sticking with the 5th generation as we take a look at a system even Nintendo themselves have tried to forget. I'm talking of course about the often underrated and always over-abused Virtual Boy. In the early 90s, virtual reality was massive, and we've already seen how various companies tried to cash in on the idea of getting gamers more immersed in the game with devices such as the Aura Interactor. But fully immersing the user within a virtual world of 3D graphics was seen as the holy grail for consumer electronics companies, with various head-mounted display systems being talked about everywhere, including one for the Atari Jaguar which would feature full motion tracking. However, all these systems either didn't work or were just too expensive to sell to the public. Not everyone gave up though, as Nintendo chose to invest heavily in stereoscopic graphics technology, prioritising this even ahead of the development of CD-based hardware. So important was this that they assigned one of their in-house legends to the job, Gunpei Yokoi, head of Research and Development Team 1 and the creator of the massively popular Game Boy and the Game & Watch handhelds. It would now be his task to bring Nintendo back into the forefront of video game technology by creating an affordable home and portable console with true stereoscopic 3D graphics straight out of the box. Gunpei began work with his team on what would become the Virtual Boy, basing the system around a powerful 32-bit processor, impressive considering the size of this new console. In early prototypes, the team used one LCD screen for each eye, with the images being slightly offset from one another, creating the illusion of depth. However, cheap early LCD screens were blurry due to their low refresh rate, and made it look more like the user was seeing double rather than the intended 3D effect, while higher quality screens were simply too expensive to make the Virtual Boy a viable consumer product, and also required too much power, especially when you're planning on using two of them. Next, the team decided to switch to LEDs due to their far lower power requirements. However, multicoloured LEDs were still prohibitively expensive, especially when used in the quantities needed by the Virtual Boy. And so Gunpei took a leaf from his previous success with the Game Boy, deciding to go with monochrome graphics, although rather than the green display of that system, the Virtual Boy would use red, as these were not only the cheapest LEDs, but also the brightest, which would be an important factor in making the next stage of the Virtual Boy process work properly. You see, the Virtual Boy uses a single line of LEDs for each eye, combined with a rapidly oscillating mirror. Each of these mirrors takes the single line of pixels generated by the LED strip and combines its reflection with that of the previous and subsequent line of pixels to create what to the human eye looks like a complete image. A little bit like those spinning LED message gadgets you can find in some gadget stores. And it's because of this that such high brightness is needed, because each pixel is actually only displayed by the LED array for a fraction of a second before the next pixel takes its place. Then, with both of these screens displaying a slightly offset image, the brain combines the two, and just as with the LCD system, the illusion of depth is created. The display solution had now been found, but the use of motorised mirrors would make the unit quite bulky, and Nintendo's health and safety people weren't happy, and chose to block the Virtual Boy from becoming a wearable head-mounted system, deciding instead that it should have a stand and would need to be kept on a flat surface such as a table when in use. However, this can make it quite uncomfortable to play. So here at ReplayRetro, we have a few other options for you to consider. Firstly, why not try gaffer taping the console to your head for gaming on the go? Ow! Ah! Oh, it hurts! Oh! Oh god! Oh! Oh, my face! Or you could lay the console on your face while you relax in your bed. Perhaps try this the other way around, resting your face against the console. And of course, for the fashion conscious amongst you, why not mount the Virtual Boy to your favourite hat? Okay, I think I'm actually onto something here. Oh no, wait, it's falling off my head. Wait, no, this works. Yeah, hold the controller. If that wasn't bad enough, early tests also found that many people got headaches and even neck pains from playing the Virtual Boy for even reasonable amounts of time. And because of these problems, Gunpei wanted to keep working on the console and informed his bosses at Nintendo that the system just wasn't ready for release yet. However, problems with the company's other project, the N64, meant that it had been heavily delayed, and Nintendo were desperate to get a new system on the market, as both Sony and Sega had already launched their 5th generation of hardware, and the Super Nintendo was taking a real pounding. Because of this, Nintendo insisted that the Virtual Boy be released, and in 1995 that's exactly what happened, as the unfinished system rolled out across America and Japan for $180. But before we see how it did, let's take a look at the hardware itself and a couple of the games. Okay, so here we are with the Virtual Boy itself, and you can see I've really struggled to get this in shot due to the height of the machine with its stand connected. Obviously the first thing I'll notice is the stand itself. It's actually quite nice when it's standing there, especially as a display piece. Those two legs are quite nice. And they simply disconnect using this little clip here. And you can take the stand away and sit it there. It's also got an angling thing on the stand and a tightening control, whatever, but we don't really need to see that. The console itself then, you'll see you have the Virtual Boy wording here at the front, and it's this nice red and black. You've got the cartridge port just here, where you put your game packs in. Underneath you find the controller port, which looks very similar to an NES controller port. I believe it is the same kind of port, roughly. I'm not entirely sure, but I do remember hearing at some point that NES controllers will plug in, but they obviously just won't do anything, because this system, as you'll see, gets its power from the controller. You also have this external port here. That is for the communications cable, which was never actually released, but was of course designed to allow you to do two-player. There are a few two-player games about, so if you do want to have a two-player game, you can, because you can actually make one of these cables. There are links on the internet as to how to make the link cables, and then you could play whatever two-player games are available against a friend, which would be quite cool, I think, really. I believe Tolero Boxer allows that feature, which would be amazing. You have a headphone port here and a volume dial, and you have the usual writing and serial numbers, model numbers, etc., all the guff you would expect. On the top you have the focus selector. You can move that across to change the focus, and this dial here adjusts the mirrors. I'm not going to play with any of those because mine is set up perfectly for how I need it, and I really don't want to mess that up. At the business end then, where you would put your face, you can see you have this visor. This is neoprene and can be taken out if you want to, but there's really no need. And you can see here the two displays. So inside each of those, well, deep inside each of those is your rapidly oscillating mirror. That's my best impression of a rapidly oscillating mirror. And a strip of LEDs for displaying the graphics. So let's click this back on its stand, and we'll take a look at the control pad. There we go, that's nice and secure. Control pad then, as you can see, quite reminiscent of what would become the GameCube pad, really. You have an on and off switch there for the console. You have two D-pads, which are obviously designed to help you play games in a fully 3D space before someone had thought of using analog sticks. Select and start, and B and A. Now you'll notice this is completely symmetrical, and also symmetrical are the two, I can't really decide if they count as shoulder buttons or trigger buttons really there, your L and R buttons. But because of this symmetry, the system could be played comfortably by left-handed or right-handed players. Most of the games that I've got feature an option to switch the controller, so obviously these two would then become your select and start, and they become your A and B, and the D-pad swap function. So that's quite cool. Certain games like Tolero Boxer actually use each D-pad to control each individual fist, which again is quite cool. So it's a very versatile controller, and considering that they were planning on creating games for this system which hadn't really been done before and would require a new method of movement, this seems like a good way to go. On the back of the controller you have this clip point. Now here is where you either attach a battery pack for playing your Virtual Boy on the go, or, like I would, you can attach this AC adapter, which I believe clips on roughly. There we go. That's how we clip that on. I'm so going to edit all that out. There was literally 2 minutes of me trying to clip that on. And then that has a nice long amount of cable on it, leading to this power supply. Obviously, if like me, you're in the UK, you will need a step-down converter to use this. Don't forget that. And that simply plugs in to the bottom of your Virtual Boy console, into that port that we saw before. There we go. Next up, let's have a look at a game. Games come in these boxes, very similar to normal Game Boy boxes. This is a Japanese game. It's actually the only game I have a box for, that's why I'm using this one. Opening it up, you find instruction manuals, warranty cards, the leaflet that tells you the Virtual Boy may rot your mind, blah blah blah. What's this one do? Something you can send off. I might not do that ever. And then the game cartridge itself. These look just like big Game Boy carts, really. Not really a lot to say about them. You get this neat little protector on the front. You can pull off. You must pull this off before you put it in, or you can damage the console. It can get stuck in there. So you pull that off, revealing the pinouts. Slot your game cartridge in with the sticker facing up until it clicks. There you go. Turn on the power on your controller and you're ready to enter the virtual world.
Right, so obviously you're not going to be getting the here because I filmed this through one lens boy using a camera. I did try to set it up to film both lenses at the same time, stereoscopically using 2 different cameras, but it was just fitting the 2 cameras in that was difficult, so you're not getting the 3D effect. This is the automatic pause option here. I've turned it off. If I turned it on, the game would automatically pause every 15 minutes, just to encourage me to take a break to avoid the headaches and neck pains associated with the Virtual Boy. The 3D effect on this title screen is brilliant. Unfortunately, obviously, you're not getting it, but it is really good. As the screen says, this is Tolero Boxer. Just start a new save file. You can see here, this robot is my first opponent. This is essentially Rock'em Sock'em Robots. A bit like that Real Steel film that's just come out. So you can see I can block. I have several punches, several standard punches. I also have an uppercut and a what's the word for a really like wide side punch? I don't know. As well as super punches, which is when when my fists are flashing there, you can see that they're charging up. But obviously that leaves me defenseless for a little while and my opponent can hit me. You're best to do that when they're dizzy, really. His first opponent is quite easy. You can get a lot of punches on him quite easily. When I get hit like that, the screen goes fuzzy, or if I've been hit really hard, it might blur and shake a little bit. And that's a really disorientating effect when that happens. It's a really good effect, because obviously if you were to be punched, you would be disorientated. Sticking with the virtual reality concept quite well. It's the end of that round. It's a fantastic game, one that I would definitely like to have seen in 2-player. And if you do own a Virtual Boy, definitely get yourself a copy of Tolero Boxer. Oh, nasty uppercut. So, as you can see, this is Wario Land. Obviously a platformer for the Virtual Boy. And again, the 3D effect on this title screen is brilliant. The title screens, for some reason, on all these games are great. The 3D of that is quite cool. And I do like the fact that basically, you know, they've used the 3D effect well there to create an enemy, or is it an enemy or an obstacle, I suppose, really, that you wouldn't normally be able to get. Because you wouldn't have been able to get the depth in a normal Mario or Wario game. Of course, as you can see, they include plenty of normal platform features. So it's not just about using the 3D for the sake of using the 3D. But where the 3D is used with, for example, those swinging obstacles, is, yeah, it's really well used. Is that gone in my inventory? Oh, can't see it. It's difficult because obviously I'm playing through the camera's viewfinder. So I'm not actually getting the full 3D either. Oh, can't pick that up, I don't know why. Oh, didn't see that coming out of the background there. Now on these catapult things, you'll notice you can spring into the background, and that is a brilliant effect. It looks really cool when you're actually playing it using the 3D. And again, it adds a new dimension to the gameplay, because I'm now playing it in the background. And obviously I needed to go in the background to pass that lava flow. So again, it's a clever use of the 3D. And of course, what is the point in having 3D if you don't use it in a variety of clever ways? And Wario Land definitely uses it in a few very clever ways. Okay, so this is Red Alarm.
Good luck.
Some voice synthesis there. This is a little bit Lilac Wars, or a little bit, you know, Star Wing, that kind of thing.
Here we go.
And again, it uses the 3D in combination with wireframes really well. You'll notice these little almost heads-up display type prompts, you know, that highlight some of the enemies, like that. And when you're using the full 3D effect by, you know, wearing the Virtual Boy properly, that is absolutely brilliant. You can really, those heads-up display things are brought right into your face, so it's very clear that they are in the cockpit with you and the enemies are outside. This game doesn't really use 3D in a gimmicky way at all, it just uses it for the actual presentation of depth, so your enemies are further away, etc. You can see weapon shots coming in towards you. Sometimes it can be quite difficult because of the wireframiness to see what's what, and that's why obviously I got trapped behind that barrier then. One of your D-pads here moves you, left, right, up, down, as you would expect. And the other one kind of gives you like a little booster to either jink your ship up and down or strafe it left and right. Difficult to explain really, but it's quite useful in dodging certain things. And that is Red Alarm on the Virtual Boy.
Upon its release, the Virtual Boy was subject to mockery and criticism. Sales were poor, and despite the last-minute inclusion of an auto-pause function encouraging players to take regular breaks, rumours of the headaches and neck pains soon circulated, putting many people off Nintendo's new console. Those who did take the plunge were unimpressed by the lack of colour. After all, this was no longer seen as a portable system, and the stand put it in the firing line of proper home consoles. Not even Nintendo had faith in the struggling console, and granted it very little space at their trade show that autumn. Several price drops soon followed, and within a few months the system was retailing at under $100. The European release was pushed back several times before eventually being scrapped altogether, and finally the Virtual Boy was discontinued in March of 1996. In its mere 10-month lifespan, the system sold just around 800,000 units, and only 22 games had been released. Nintendo were no longer invincible, and after finishing work on the Game Boy Pocket, Gunpei Yokoi left the company after 31 years of loyal service, tragically dying in a car accident just 1 year later at the age of 56. As we all know, Nintendo returned to 3D gaming in 2011 with the 3DS, and it seems the jury is still out as to whether or not that system will be a success either. And while Nintendo have briefly hinted at the concept of Virtual Boy games coming to this handheld via the Virtual Console, nothing is concrete at the moment. Personally, I think that while the 3DS does have the advantage of colour, the actual 3D effect is far better on the Virtual Boy, and if, like me, you don't have a problem with monochrome as long as the games play well, then I would definitely recommend that you get yourself a Virtual Boy and some paracetamol and enjoy everything this fantastic and totally unique system has to offer. That's all from me for another week, and of course next weekend is the Replay Expo in Blackpool, so there won't be a show then. But I hope to see plenty of you there at the Norbreck Castle Hotel, and please don't hesitate to come and say hi. As always, you can keep in touch via our Twitter page, and I'll be back next time with a look at this year's Expo. See you then. Long enough. Ah, you son of a bitch.